2023 was an absolutely incredible year for film. I watched more movies than I ever have this year and was consistently blown away. Narrowing down my top 25 films would be difficult and heartbreaking, but I don't want to be here all day, so I'm only doing 15. Now, my taste doesn't always align with popular film criticism, so I want to quickly defend why some of the year's most beloved masterpieces won't be on my list. First things first, 13-time Oscar nominated mass murderer Robert J. Oppenheimer did not make the cut. I like this movie, I really did, and I love the Barbenheimer phenomenon that happened. I remember there being this palpable love of film in the air, and Oppenheimer certainly had some of my favorite cinematic moments of the year. From the Trinity test to the victory speech to every Emily Blunt scene. But that all being said, someone needs to rein Christopher Nolan in a little bit. It was a bit long and unfocused. While there certainly is a 2-hour version of this film that would have made my list, this one doesn't. The Holdovers has become somewhat of an instant classic this year. I have nothing bad to say about it, but whatever heartwarming magic this movie evokes in people went right over my head. But Go Vine, I'm so happy for you. Please take all of your awards. Poor Things is an absolutely incredible movie and I love it very much. It deserves every bit of praise it's received. I don't know, I guess I was just hoping to love it more. There was really only one scene that dropped my jaw, kicked me in the gut, and took my breath away when it felt like the whole movie should be doing that. Eileen. I actually haven't seen this one on a lot of people's best of lists, but it really should be. Be gay, do crime. It's amazing, but it didn't make my cut. Now, for the films I just plain haven't seen. First, The Zone of Interest was probably very good, but I don't really watch Holocaust movies anymore. If Lady Night the Brave ever recommends it, I'll give it a shot. Next is Anatomy of a Fall. I want to see this one, I really do. I will watch it as soon as it's on Hulu, but it's a bit of a hard sell if I'm being honest. Like, why do I feel bad about not wanting to watch a 150-minute French courtroom drama? But Kristen Stewart likes it.
I think Anatomy of a Fall is... I was bellowing in the theater. I've seen it twice, which is required.
So it's at the top of my watch list. And the last one is the big one. Martin Scorsese's Killers of the Flower Moon. I generally don't like Scorsese movies, but in his defense, I haven't seen most of them. But in my defense, I wouldn't like them. That being said, I do not begrudge the man. I hope he gets to keep making movies until he's dead. I just don't really want to see them. And I don't want to get into the whole long movies debate, but if this one was under 3 hours, I would have watched it. I watch movies I don't want to all the time, but 200 minutes is too big of an ask for a film that will most likely disappoint me. If you are endlessly curious what I would think of the film if I actually watch it, I would recommend listening to the White People Won't Save You podcast episode. It is an amazing podcast about white savior movies, and I'm sure those black men covered any feeling that I would have about Killers of the Flower Moon. Well, that's enough of my bad movie takes. Let's get to my objectively perfect, definitive top 15 films of the year 2023. Number 15, Beau Is Afraid, is an incomprehensible 3-hour monstrosity pretending to be a movie. Actually, before I talk about Beau, I want to acknowledge this trend of auteur directors making these overly indulgent, masturbatory 3-hour films. I'm talking Avatar, Babylon, The Snyder Cuts, Oppenheimer, and Killers of the Flower Moon. While I was negative about a couple of those movies, I don't dislike the trend. Beau made my list, and I wish Babylon was longer. My question is, when will they let a woman make one of these? I've looked, and women do not get to make these kinds of films. And I don't know if it's because studios and financiers won't suffer a woman for that long, or because women are generally socialized to have a basic respect for other people's time. Either way, we need to fix this. Because while I do believe that making a 3-hour movie is inherently an immoral act of self-pleasure, I want to see Emerald Fennell touch herself. That came out wrong. What I'm trying to say is that I know that there are a lot of auteur women directors out there who have burning 3 hour monstrosities inside of them, and I want to see them. I feel robbed of their indulgences. Greta Gerwig, Jennifer Caden Robinson, Emma Seligman, Lee Janiak, Alice Wu, Melina Matsoukas. I know they have one in them. For a single second, it looked like Netflix was going to let Nancy Meyers make hers, but the Hollywood cowards haven't let her make a movie in nearly a decade. Taylor Swift, if you hear this, make your first movie as mad, shameless, loud, and as long as Martin Scorsese would. That all being said, I liked Beau Is Afraid. Or at least I think I did. Ari Aster's overly indulgent flop is remarkably poignant and personal. It is a lot of movie. Too much movie, to be honest. Ostensibly, it is about a man going home to attend his mother's funeral, but please do not bring a sense of logic to this film. It is an incredibly vivid visualization of an irrational anxiety attack, and if you think you can handle that and want to see some pretty cool scenes in between, then this movie is perfect for you. Number 14, Sanctuary, is my favorite surprise rom-com of the year. It is a small, one-location film about the relationship between a dominatrix and a client as he tries to fire her following a big promotion. There are a lot of mind games, manipulations, power shifts, and most importantly, romance. This movie is really made by his performances. It stars Christopher Abbott, who is phenomenal, and Margaret Qualley, who I've been enamored with ever since I saw Once Upon a Time in Hollywood and realized that Annie MacDowell had a daughter. Qualley is very emotive, but somehow never over the top, even when she's tied on a bed pretending to be Abbott's disapproving dead dad. And Abbott perfectly plays a timid character, displaying confidence that does not come naturally. This one is a real unexpected delight. Number 13, If You Were the Last. One of my favorite genres of film is the paranormal romance. I love when a writer or filmmaker tries to capture the absurd nature of love with an out-of-this-world twist, and that is exactly what this movie does. It is a love story between two people who have been trapped in space for 3 years with only each other. They try to navigate the boundaries of their relationship knowing that as long as they're trapped, they are each other's entire world. But they both also have spouses and lives on Earth that they want to get back to. Christian Mercado brings an impeccable sense of style to this movie and is able to make outer space feel nostalgic and like home while the real world feels incredibly distant. Please watch this movie if you are romantic. I'm afraid that it got lost in the streaming wars. Just a magical movie that most people won't even hear about unless they just so happen to be scrolling through Peacock romances. Number 12, To Jhoothi Makkaar, translated to You're a Liar, I'm Cunning. This Indian Hindi language romantic comedy is absolutely phenomenal. I've been getting more into Indian cinema recently ever since I found out that my local theater is constantly playing them. If yours is, I recommend you do too. If RRR opened you up to the idea of Indian action, please let To Jhoothi Makkaar open you up to romance. This rom-com has a delightfully wacky concept. Our lead character is somewhat of a reverse Hitch, where people hire him to convince their romantic partners to break up. And when he falls in love, his fiancée unknowingly hires him to break up his own relationship. There's lies, hijinks, grand romantic gestures, and of course, as is typical with Indian cinema, lots of singing and dancing. This movie has a lot of heart and asks the question, is love enough in a relationship, and what are you willing to give up for your partner? Number 11, American Fiction, the first Oscar-nominated movie on my list. It is incredible. A dissatisfied black author played by Jeffrey Wright as a bit decides to write the most stereotypical exploitative black book possible, and it turns out to be a massive success. A hilarious premise, but where this movie really shines is leaving the premise as a side plot to a more personal story about a unique and interesting black family. This allows the film to have a ton of heart, all while giving us an opportunity to laugh at the goddamn utter ignorant absurdity of it all. Number 10, The Iron Claw. Most times when I say that something made me cry, I mean that I got the feeling of wanting to cry. At best, maybe a welling tear or two slid down my cheek. Because the truth is, no matter how many girly or romantic movies I love, the stoicism of my boyish upbringing will always make it difficult for me to actually cry. But believe me when I say, I was a sobbing mess at the end of The Iron Claw. I could not think, I could not speak. This film covers the tragedy of the Von Erich family, one of the biggest dynasties in wrestling. I'm not currently very into wrestling, but I've always had a great deal of respect for it as the world's grandest theater of athleticism, drama, and most importantly, real life. This film was truly able to capture the beauty of brotherhood, performance, and the masculinity of it all. Watching it truly reminded me that being able to hear other people's stories is truly one of the great joys of life. Number 9, Godzilla Minus One. This was the first Godzilla movie I've ever seen, so I don't really have much to compare it to. It's also a war movie, which I usually don't like. It follows a World War II Japanese kamikaze pilot who encounters Godzilla after abandoning a suicide run due to a faulty plane. This movie excels at two things. The first is that Godzilla is terrifying. Godzilla only exists in this story as a force of overwhelming destruction. His appearance only means death, and that's before we see his atomic breath. The second thing this movie gets right is making it a very human-centered monster story. In the aftermath of Great Destruction, Godzilla Minus One focuses on the great resilience of the people who are left behind. It focuses on the strength of community and family and the power of fighting to live. Number 8, John Wick Chapter 4 was amazing. It tripled down on John's love for his wife, which really should not work in this tale of unimaginable violence. But somehow, it really does. But you don't need me to tell you that, so I'm giving the rest of Mr. Wick's time to Ballerina. Like John Wick, Ballerina is a revenge beat-em-up, except it's Korean and about a woman. The themes of this movie are a little darker than Wick's, but the violence is just as sweet. Sometimes the best way to deal with unending grief is beautiful murder. Number 7, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. The second entry into the Spider-Verse series strikes gold again. Starting with a heavier focus on Gwen Stacy, this movie really opens up the world of the spiders. The first movie was all about building Miles Morales up, and allowing Gwen to take on more of a protagonist character in this one allows Miles to stay more static, which is great, because his arc is all about staying true to yourself in the face of overwhelming systems and traditions of violence. The animation is unique, inventive, and just utterly unmatched. The romance is on point, and Spider-Punk is the black anti-government anarchist hero that we deserve. Number 6, Suzume. Known for Your Name and Weathering with You, director Makoto Shinkai brings us yet another extended Radwimps music video about love and disaster, and I love it. In this movie, teenage girl Suzume meets a man who is promptly turned into a chair, and together they close doors in abandoned places, eventually leading to the ruins of the real-life 2011 Tohoku earthquake and tsunami, of which the film was inspired by. This tragedy gives the film a real sense of weight as the protagonist navigates through abandoned places that once held immense love and life. Traversing Japan with a loving gaze and specific attention to detail, this might be Shinkai's most romantic work yet. Number 5, Prom Pact. Okay, I'll admit it. It is with a little bit of spite that I add this one to my list. I am such a stan for DComs, and it really feels like most critics don't even consider them real movies, so I'll be the one to sing Prom Pact's praise. It's an 80s inspired teen rom-com where a girl forms a relationship with a jock based on duplicitous reasons.
Did you think I was just a dumb jock before this?
Did you know who I was before this?
Why'd you offer to tutor me?
Love it. Absolute star Peyton Elizabeth Lee from the phenomenal Annie Mac carries this film.
He's a Neanderthal whose only forms of communication are grunts and go bulldogs!
Visionary, and it has just the slightest bit of edge for a Disney audience.
Kissed? Ugh, what are you, 9? I'm talking about your P in a V.
Now that's a movie. But the best thing this movie does, in my opinion, is its portrayal of friendship. The friendships in rom-coms can often be perfunctory, but Manny and Ben's platonic relationship takes a front seat in this one, even indulging in the big romantic gesture of the film. As someone who considers himself to be romantic but rarely dates, my friends are the great romances in my life, and I love seeing that reflected on screen.
Go Bulldog!
Number 4, Saltburn. One of the more controversial films of the year, I absolutely loved Saltburn. I've heard it said that if Promising Young Woman was Emerald Fennell's triumph in writing, then Saltburn is her masterclass in directing. This is the most gorgeous film of the year. The first 30 seconds alone, where the camera lonely gazes at Felix as Oliver says he wasn't in love with him, took my breath away and I never caught it. Fennell knows that it's not the job of a camera to capture beauty, but rather to create it. And she creates such a tantalizing world of pretty people and extravagance, and she puts it in a box and on a screen just far enough that the audience can't touch it, so that the audience may get just a taste of the all-consuming violent desire this film portrays. Saltburn also had perhaps the most provocative scenes of the year. Bathtub, vampire, grave, you know what I'm talking about. And those are certainly fun to talk about, but the things that will definitely stick with me from this film are Barry Keoghan's masterful leading performance and the obsessive beauty of it all. And also the naked teen hangout montage set to Time to Pretend by MGMT. That was so 2000s teen movie I could die. Number 3, Barbie. The highest grossing film of the year and also the best. Barbie is nothing short of a miracle. Greta Gerwig is a once-in-a-generation talent, and when I heard that she was doing Barbie, I got scared. I had no doubt that the finished product would be of quality, but it could not have the soft and warm soul that I had grown to love from Gerwig. It would be a product. I mean, how good can a glorified toy commercial really be? Exceptional, it turns out. Perfect set design puts the film in a world of play from beginning to end, and it all culminates to how we play with Barbies in the first place, because both the film and the toy generally ask us, what does it mean to be a person, especially a woman, with a future? And how great is that? Number 2, Past Lives, is the most personal and touching film of 2023. It tells the story of Nora and Haesung, a potential love story cut off at its head by great distance when Nora moves away. The rest of the film meanders itself through a love story that never happened and is unbearably gripping throughout. Every character is brutally honest and loving, and it all comes together to say that in every life we live, we move closer to love. So, before my number 1, I'm going to throw in a few honorable mentions because this year was entirely too phenomenal to only talk about 15 films. Jagged Mind was the black lesbian paranormal horror romance you didn't know you needed. Rye Lane was black, British, stylish, and a perfect romance. They Cloned Tyrone was hilarious and biting and definitely worth the watch. Creed 3's anime-inspired fighting should not be missed. Magic Mike's Last Dance truly has some of the best performances of the year. Theater Camp is absolutely joyous and has one of the best songs of the year. Beautiful Disaster is true chaotic trashy genius and has the best meet cute of the year. And honestly, so many more movies should be mentioned. But finally, my number 1 film of the year is Bottoms. Emma Seligman brought a real sense of brilliance to this dumb film about a high school lesbian fight club starring Rachel Sennett, Ayo Edebiri, and a phenomenal supporting cast.
Could the ugly, untalented gays please report to the principal's office?
If that doesn't sell you on it, I don't know what will. But ultimately, as the only film I saw this year that mentioned bell hooks,
Who is
Bell hooks, and why do we care?
I am forced to award it first place. I do in fact make the rules. Thank you everyone. Thanks so much for watching my video. I hope it was fun. Comparing movies and making top lists is inherently a bit silly, but it's really fun. Check out my letterbox for even more bad movie takes, and join me here next week for a hard-hitting true crime video essay investigation where I finally solve Sophie Ellis-Bextor's murder on the dance floor. In this movie,